Hello, today is Friday, May 16th. Welcome to episode 453 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson, and I'm joined by Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller and Senior Fellows Jeffrey Wells and Matthew Hayden. Today, we are going to talk about Syria, specifically President Ahmad al-Sharaa. The new president of Syria met with President Trump this week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, along with other regional leaders. Just a few months ago, he was the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, which was a terrorist group that the U.S. recognized as a terrorist group, an affiliate at one point of al-Qaeda. He was involved in al-Nusra. As Arnold Schwarzenegger might say, 2 years ago, they were just another snake cult. Now this guy is running Syria and is being hailed by world leaders as the great hope. Notably, President Trump announced that the U.S. would suspend sanctions on Syria because of his leadership during this, actually in advance of the meeting. He announced it, and then he had the meeting. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met with the Syrian foreign minister yesterday in Turkey. So a lot of things going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of issues to be resolved here, given Syria's recent history. How will it deal with Iran? How will it deal with terrorists in Syria? What will its relationship with Israel be? There's some positive indicators on those questions, but not definitive answers just yet. U.S. troops remain in Syria. By press reports, 1,000 U.S. troops are in Syria. So we have boots on the ground in that place, which has been very dangerous for the last, 15 years or so. So a lot going on, big change, big pivot here for Syria. Martha, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts here about the sustainability of this good news from Damascus?
Look, I think I'm actually going to praise the Trump administration on this. I think it's actually pretty fascinating that President Trump has effectively isolated Iran with this one trip. China had tried to thaw relations between the Saudi Arabia and Iran. This solidifies, this trip, the agreement on arms deals to Saudi Arabia, really changes the calculus for the Saudis. And, I think the lifting the sanctions on Syria really, is kind of a death knell to Iran's goals of the Shia crescent. And so I think, if you think of it both geographically and politically, this is actually a very interesting move against Iran. And it's a calculated risk because we can't fully trust the Syrians as right now, but we have to trust and verify. Same with the transfers of chips and other technology to other partners. Look, there's a risk involved with all of this, but I think ultimately Iran is the threat. It is an existential threat for America. It's an existential threat for Israel, and I think this is actually a very interesting move.
Matt Hayden, Syria's had a very troubled recent history. A lot of different groups inside Syria fighting each other. A lot of actors from the outside coming in and playing a role. Russia, the United States. Not that we're the bad guys or anything. I think we were trying to do the right thing. Israel, Iran, Turkey. A lot of players inside Syria. Can all of this be sorted out in a coherent way in the next few months?
I don't think in the next few months, but Syria has been defined by hostility for decades. And one of the efforts that were put forth with sanctions was to have a way for Syria to kind of approach things differently with new leadership, with new regional partnerships, with support from regional partners that are bringing them to the table to meet with the president. You do have a different approach. Luckily for those that are in the trust but verify game, if this starts to go sideways, reinstilling sanctions isn't the end of the world and can be done. But you also have the ability to try and look at people we have, from a counterterrorism standpoint, looked as training grounds for people that want to harm Americans. You can start to look at them in a different light. If there are abilities to increase awareness and support in areas that had been hostile to the United States in the past, why not? There's always going to be a challenge where we have to maintain awareness. And as we look at that whole region where we may not have the same ability to collect and verify as we had in the past, it gives us an ability to really have those kinds of conversations. And candidly, just to Martha's point, this feels like a risk worth taking because you have the Iranian part of the equation, and you have this empowers that relationship with the Saudis and the U.S. to even be stronger because it shows them as a collective bargainer. And so I think that's going to be something that strengthens on both sides. Again, time will tell, and I don't think this is a multi-month. It's going to be a multi-year conversation, but it is definitely a positive note in this history.
Jeffrey Wells, President Trump, at the same week, had this very significant trip to the region, visited 3 Sunni Arab countries, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, did not go to Israel. A lot of interesting pivots here, a lot of talk of business and selling arms, the Syria gambit here. One of the interesting things President Trump said in a speech, kind of put neocons in the corner and said, we're not going to preach to countries about how they should govern themselves and what they should do. We're going to let them build their own countries. We're going to get out of the way and work with them from the outside. We're not going to be preaching to people. What are your thoughts about this seeming change in U.S. strategy in the region?
So, as Martha and Matt shared, I think there are big risks. I'm not so sure how calculated these were, but big risks with big upsides. So if I can speak to the president here today, hey, Mr. President, so you've lifted sanctions. I hope you've considered the following. Certainly unlocking, frozen billions of dollars for hospitals, for roads, for power plants, for refugees to return home from Lebanon and Jordan is a wonderful thing. And if interim leader Ahmad al-Sharaa and his new $250,000 watch actually hunt down ISIS remnants, then the U.S. gains here a legitimate security and intel partner, and certainly we have a whole new outlook on the region. Working with our very, very generous Gulf partners, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, and we can't forget how generous Qatar is, to dial down Iran's meddling in the region by cranking up Rock the Casbah by the clash. Suddenly, Damascus is no longer Tehran's dance floor, and as Martha had said, this is a brilliant play if it works out. Plus, we get leverage in demanding here that Syria destroy its chemical weapons, whatever are left, and most significantly, account for Austin Tice and any other unaccounted U.S. national that may still be held somewhere in the country. But there are spoilers ahead. Al-Sharaa's coalition includes, as you said, former rebels, many of which have ex-Al-Qaeda on their resumes. Flooding them with cash risks empowering warlords. And don't forget the Iranian militias, are still in the region. And whether they're connected or tethered back home to Iran, they're going to be trouble. Russian contractors are still in the region. They'll be lining up for contracts, reconstruction contracts. And sanctions have always been our diplomatic hammer, or at least they once were, albeit a very old and small, decrepit hammer at the moment. But we need predictability and not a policy roller coaster on Syria. And so I can't believe I'm going to say this, the president is kind of on the right track on this one.
Oh, boy.
But for taxpayers and for the United States, there's an upfront tab that we have to pay. Aid programs are needed. Inspectors are needed. And post-Doge, I don't know if this is possible. That said, a stable Syria could shrink future counter ISIS ops and other instability, as well as I said, bring those refugees home. The moral play here is, helping rebuild Syria aligns with what was at least once a long-standing American value. And if we don't end up, if we don't end up funding the bad guys again. So the best case, we have targeted relief, some kind of oversight, as Matt highlighted, clear benchmark, and as both Martha and Matt highlighted as well, is our allied buy-in, and we get post-conflict success. The worst case, this blanket pardon of Damascus is, Iran and Russia grab the keys and the money, and we're stuck in an endless fight, and we have refugee crisis. So the bottom line here is easing Syrian sanctions is a high stakes hand to play. If we play it with guardrails and we rebuild both a nation and our credibility, that's great. If we skip them and we're left holding the losers' chips here, empowering extremists, eroding trust, we get a region that's I can't even believe this, even more volatile than it has been in the past. It's like an unscripted reality show. So I think this administration has a real opportunity, and I'm pretty impressed that they got this far. The question is, can they execute? I don't know. I sure hope so.
Wait, Jeffrey, can I interject?
Yes.
Can I interject? Did you just say nation building?
I see it. Yes.
Okay. I just, I think that's an interesting.
Yeah, I know. I did.
I thought we were done with nation building.
Jeffrey, you used a dancing metaphor and a gambling metaphor by my count during your little soliloquy there. I'm going to go with the dancing metaphor. We won't talk about the hair twirling in Abu Dhabi, but I do think it was notable that Trump, or they played for Trump, the song YMCA, I think at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar.
Did they really?
They did. And which, the song is changing in the Middle East, my friends. These are a lot of interesting developments.
Good point.
I will. All right. The one thing I'm going to highlight before we close here is that Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina was with Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Turkey, meeting with the Syrians yesterday. There's an interesting thing going on here in the way this administration is doing national security decision making. The NSC advisor job has essentially been eliminated. Rubio's doing both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. It's pretty clear to me that the old method of teeing up a policy, deep dive into the policy and a memo with recommendations to the president is out. There's a much more of a freewheeling consultative arrangement with President Trump and key advisors, including, interestingly, members of Congress like Lindsey Graham, discussions with leaders in the region, and less of a reliance on folks detailed to the White House staff from certain bureaucracies to tee up a more of a scientific policy option for the president. This is more about conversations and relationships and recommendations from other political leaders. It is a different way of doing things, certainly, than the last administration, and very different, really, than anything we've seen since the end of World War II. And so I think, folks, there's in addition to all of the challenges that a regular relationship with Syria is going to endure, and there's going to be some ups and downs here for sure. I think the bigger picture issue here is the administration's kind of changing the way the U.S. makes decisions about global affairs, and we're going to see more developments like this, seemingly big changes in the way the U.S. does business around the world. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Monday, May 19th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're now on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.